Hi, I'm Donna Dewberry. Welcome to the Plaid Studio. Today we're doing another Let's Paint FolkArt One Stroke hometown lesson. We have a lesson every month so that we can fill this gallery wall behind me. And this month we're doing May. I'm excited to do May with you because when I look out my window, I see all the beautiful doors in my neighborhood. And I thought, what a perfect piece to put in our gallery. So if you look out and see this beautiful stucco yellow and you put a green door to it and then embellish it with one of my favorite flowers, which is roses. I did an arbor of baby roses around the door and then a bigger rose right at the top for you. And I welcome makes it really nice for that wall. To do this, I always love to have things that make learning and teaching easier. So if you haven't already, Plaid's made this beautiful kit for you. I'd love for you to go to plaidonline.com/let's paint and look at this kit and see all the supplies that you can get inside of it. One of my favorite things is the FolkArt One Stroke paint, which is multi-surface paint. And then we have brushes and tools. We even have 12 reusable teaching guides, one for every single month, and lessons I'm going to teach you that you can practice right on top of those. We have templates and patterns, which I usually don't have, which are great for these projects. And we also have 2 stencils, and those stencils are going to have upper and lowercase letters so you can personalize yours even more. So I am so excited for you to come join me. Let's go into the studio and let's start painting our lesson today. Well, welcome to my studio, and I am so excited about this surface also for our painting today, and the bright colors for spring. We've got the pretty yellows and golds and reds, and we have this cute little wreath on the door here that I think you're going to love painting with me. The first thing we're going to do, besides getting our kit together, pulling out what we need out of the kit, is a reusable teaching guide for May. And this guide is going to have the step-by-steps. If you haven't painted with me before, you're going to see that this reusable teaching guide is really going to help you with all the leaves and the flowers that you're going to be learning. And it's going to have your paint colors here. So we're going to use wicker white, yellow ochre, and then we're going to use citrus green and sap green, an apple red, burnt umber, licorice, and moon yellow. And then be sure you pull out your floating mediums. So those and all the brushes that you're going to use for this project are right here in the reusable teaching guide. And then you also want to get out whatever word you want to put on here. And I chose welcome to go on. So if we get that all out ready, we'll be ready to start our project. Let's look at the surface a little bit more here. I love this surface because it's slender, it's tall, there's little wall areas that you can put it in really easily. But now what you're going to notice is that this is a pine frame, which will coat really easily, and this is like chalkboard. And it's a slicker chalkboard type surface. Now what's going to happen on it, because it's so slick, you might want to take and lightly sand and get a roughness on this slick surface, which is going to make the wicker white adhere better to it. Now we're going to base coat the whole thing wicker white, and you want to make it enough coats that it's opaque so it covers really well. And I've already pre-base coat this, so you might want to pause and get yours all base coated and ready for us to start. All right, now I'm going to just make sure a little light sanding. And that's going to make a difference when we go to paint all of our colors on here, okay? Now, so what we're going to do first is I want you to go to the background. And before I put on the door, which we're going to draw out ourselves while we're here, we're also going to start putting the color in the background. So the wall color of the house is going to be the yellow ochre. All right, so let's get our 3/4 inch flat, and we want to base coat the whole background here and have this coated and to start drying before we draw the door and the entrance to the door. All right. So I'm going to pick up, you know what, I'm going to get some floating medium out too. I put some of the colors that we're going to do the entrance with too. So we'll be ready. So I'm going to come all in here. You don't want too much medium or it won't cover as well as we want. Let's see how nice that lets it move. One of the big reasons is that this multi-surface paint that we're using has got a sealer in it, and it's so wonderful. And when each layer dries on here, it makes your painting experience beautiful. Okay, so we're going to get a nice coat on here. And I even go all the way down to the bottom, because what's going to happen is the yellow ochre is going to be a tone that's underneath the step area here, the entrance. All right, so we're going to get more on the edges, and I'll go back and shade the edges. We will as we go here. Now what we will notice is that there's some nice accents that I'll show you a little bit more later, is when you have a molding or a trim around. See, I keep getting the medium in here. You can accent. See, we've done gray and licorice. We made a gray, used the licorice and some white trim. Any little thing like that really adds to it. Now, see, this is going to take a couple coats to get it like I want it. Okay, so up here, take and go back and forth like this, because it's hard to follow a green when we're going in that arch area there. And then you can come back. Really light coats. Pull long streaks. There again, after we get this first coat, it'll be easier. Okay, so now we want to do a little bit of prep to get us ready for putting on our door and our entranceway. All right, so if you noticed on this, I did scoot the door slightly to the left, and I have all this vine coming up here, so I could use a little bit more room here for the topiary and have this vine hanging on both sides. So it's just slightly off-centered, but I did that on purpose for that reason. Then I've got the welcome centered up here, because I want in this area here to put a pretty little flower spray. All right. Now, to get started, just to let you know what I did, I have the door 1 inch from the molding. All right, so we're going to just take a pencil or a piece of chalk. I'm going to use a pencil today and put one little mark. I like chalk a lot, but sometimes chalk will mess up my edge because the chalk absorbs the paint so much. Then I'm going to show you from right here. We're going to go from right here. It's just going to be 1/8 past the 2. All right, so I'm going to move this up here so that we can put, right here is going to be the bottom of the door. So I want to do a couple of those lines, because that helps us make a straight door. All right, so let's see how far from the right's, I'm going to go 1/8 from this side. All right, and come on up and do it a couple times, okay? And then let's see how tall we want it. So we're going 10.5. So we have a nice straight line. Okay, so I'm going to go across here, and let's go down here first. And let's get the straight line all the way down to the top of our door. And then move it over here. Follow, that's why I like it multiple lines, then we can make sure it's really nice and straight. All right, and across the top. Okay, across the bottom. All right, so now let's look at this bottom area. I did come down another, let's come down a little bit more here. I came down a 1/2 inch from, yeah, I came down a 1/2 inch more to give you the step down. All right, so now that you have the step down, then I'm going to come right here where the step down is and go down at an angle from both sides. Okay, and then see how that step down is. That's about how that is, how wide the stones are going to be. And they're like tiles here. So on the top edge, I'm going to make a top edge, which I'm going to base coat it, so you're going to have to make a top edge darker probably. This one's going to be slightly smaller because it's over there where I told you it was going to be a little bit shorter. All right, but then when you do these tiles here, this angle is going to be different. You see that? Because you're looking down on it now. It comes down here. All right, and so then this is going to be the stoop as you walk in. All right. So there we go. We're not going to do any of the extra little strips top and bottom because that's going to be all floated and shaded in with sap green. Okay, now we've got our door laid out and our stoop. We want to make sure that we figure out where the word's going to go, where your welcome's going to go, so that we have room up here. And you might notice I didn't have it really nice and clean, but that's because I'm going to put trim on here anyway, so I wasn't worried about that. I'm going to come up here and find, remember I showed you that we're going to use the welcome from here, right here. And I traced it out on tracing paper. And then at this point, you want to tape it in here, and you're going to measure. Most important is that you get this line straight. See, the line at the bottom is going to be really important, and you're going to tape it and put graphite paper under here and trace all this welcome on here. All right, and just like that. And you're going to use your stylus. Okay, and start tracing your letters on here. Now you're going to love the different fonts and the different sizes and the different words and phrases that we have in this wonderful pattern pack in your kit. Okay, so that's all you're going to do through your whole welcome, all right? And it'll be right there ready for you. And if you're not right in the lines, it'll erase for you, all right? So make sure that you have the shiny side down and the matte side up if you've never used graphite paper before. All right, so let's get started with the green that we're going to use here. We're going to use a mix, and I put the mix together of citrus green because I wanted more of an olive color, so I'm going to have some citrus green and some sap green. All right, so both of these colors you're going to find out what colors you're going to use by going to your reusable teaching guide. So when we're at the reusable teaching guide, it's going to tell you the exterior wall, which we've already done. So we're going to use our 3/4 inch brush, and you're going to see right here where the door is, your shading to make sure you get this green that I mixed. All right. So I'm going to take just a little bit of the sap green, and let's mix it right here. You can use a foam plate for this. I want a nice amount, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix it right in here. All right. So just tap that in. Make sure that whole mix here is the color you want. So you have plenty, and it won't dry out as fast right here in your palette. Okay, so let's make sure our color's good. All right, so we're going to also have an eraser, make a paper towel eraser that we're going to use as we practice on our worksheet, okay? And wet it. And then this is what we're going to do. We're going to come right here and see that our color. All right, let's wipe it off and see if we're happy with that. Do it again, put it over the side a little bit, make sure we got the color. That's pretty good. You can make it any green tone that you want, but this is what I'm going to start with it right along here and then pull down. I let my little finger drag my paintbrush. All right, I'm going to go get a nicer chisel, then it's easier to stay within. All right, so I'm going to finish doing this, but I want you to see long strokes. Takes about 2 coats to get it looking like you want. And then I want to go down to this area here and show you what's going to be on the bottom, because this is when you should pause and go ahead and get yours all base coated in. I'm going to go back over here and see what it says for the foundation and the walk here, all right, coming up into the house. And so on here, I used some burnt umber in here, and I'm going to do a lot of that shading on my piece after I get it based in. But I want to put a little bit of burnt umber. I put a lot. All right. And then I'm going to get a little teeny bit of licorice and wicker white. Oops. All right. To make a little bit of a gray. It's wicker white. Okay. So let's mix just a teeny bit of this gray. Actually, I'll move it over here. And you can see I have just a little bit of gray tone in there. That's also the color I can trim my edge. You know, just mix it to the color I want. It's easier to mix it with a 12. All right, so right in here, I want you to add the little bit of gray along here. All right, and then I did ever so lightly, let me put some medium in here. I'm going to clean this up so when I put the green along there, I have a nicer finish there. Put a little bit of medium. And then go for my brown, burnt umber. All right, so we already have some yellow ochre, but I can add a little bit more yellow ochre. I like to put the two colors together so you get all shades in between. And it's already base coated yellow ochre, so. All right, so put the yellow ochre in here with the burr number. All right, then I'm going to start working some browns across here. And we're going to bring some browns down on that edge after we finish our base coat. All right, so this is just the entrance foundation down here. And it's kind of rustic. It's going to have some greenery all around it. Just dirty it up a little bit. And I always like to use the color that's underneath with the color that I'm using. Okay. And when it won't move, make sure you get a little bit of floating medium because that's going to help you. All right. So now this gray, I can take this gray with a little bit of white and give myself a little bit more, a little bit lighter, a little bit of movement so it's not so flat looking. Okay. So that's all we have to do. So let's finish the green door and I'll be back with you in just a minute. Okay, now you see I've smoothed out this bottom a little bit more, add a little bit of white on top of this to smooth it out. And I want to also talk to you more about the trim I told you about. Now, the thing I said, I put a black trim, the black trim's right on inside edge. And so that cleans that all up, but it's important that you do it at this stage because when we put all the flowers here, it's got to be underneath. So this will give it a chance to dry. Then this medium gray mix that we did from here is the color I put on this whole inside edge. And then before I touch up the white edge again, I painted the outside edge with the licorice. All right, I just can't believe how the difference this makes from an all white edge that I'm used to doing to all the different edges of color it makes. So then I did a nice extra coat of white on top to clean it up at the end. So this is what it looks like before with just all white. And then look what it looks like with all that pretty trim color. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and start floating in the trim on the door. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 3/4 inch brush. I'm going to make sure I have some good floating medium. And let's put some floating medium on a plate because I think you'll have a better job of seeing how this goes on here. You can use a 12 or 3/4. I want you to start with one. Sometimes it's nicer to use a larger brush, but if you're not comfortable with that or if you feel like it's not stroking smooth for you, you can go to a 12. All right, so let's put our floating medium out. All right, so we have to keep that clean. Now, I'm going to take the floating medium, and the only part of this brush that is going to have green on it will be, let's pat that down, will be the edge of the 3/4. So you see that? All right, so you're going to keep coming right there, and I don't want this wimpy. I don't want it light. I want it nice and firm, okay? So I don't want it weak. Weak is the better word. All right, so what's going to happen, I'm going to have to turn this sideways. So I just want you to look at what we've accomplished here so you can see. All right, so we're going to come across here. I'm going to keep coming over here and getting more. can come this way. I just want you to be able to see. And me see too. Okay. Then I'm going to come in here and do the next. All right. First of all, come down a little bit here. And on the other side so you can come and meet that edge. All right. So now let's come right across here. You decide how big you want this edge here. Because there's usually one strip of wood that goes across the top and the bottom. And then all the panels of wood that come down. All right, so just smooth that out. You can go over it a couple of times. All right. Now let's start working on the lines going down. Now one easy way, and I'll show you how I did this, is if you take and hit a center. All right, so the center of 5 is 2.5, right? So I'm going to put right at 2.5 a mark in a couple of places. So what's going to happen with this is kind of like when you make a fence or a basket or something, you're trying to get the center. And then what you're going to do is you're going to divide these other. So here's my middle line, then I have 3 in between. All right, I just went out a 1/2 inch from the center line, but it kind of helps you if you just make little marks and get those little 1/2 inch marks in here. So I've marked it in a couple of places, and I'm going to come down and put my straight line. All right, so because you have that one line to go by, it's going to be easier to line them up. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but what's going to make a difference is that you have some kind of gauge to go by. And when you get the first line, it's way easier to see the next lines. Okay. All right. So I'm still going to turn this a little bit so I can see myself as I'm trying to show you this. Come here and get a nice load. There's a happy medium between too much medium and not enough, all right? So I'm going to come along here. Now, I'm a right-handed person, so it's going to be more comfortable for me to do it on this side and work all the way over to the right. But for you, if you're left-handed, just start on the left and come back the opposite way. I don't want I'm going to go over that one more time. I ran out about down here. All right, because I don't want to lay my hand on top. So get a nice load on top of wet paint. All right, so now I can see the first line, makes it easier for me to get this next line. Okay, now I'm going to stop short down here. Need to go ahead and put this line here so you know where we're gauging, where we're going to. I'm going to totally turn this sideways because then I can pull it to me. See, with the medium, you can keep moving it a little bit. And it's nice, even if you go over it a couple times, okay? Sometimes I make my bottom larger than the top because that's the base of it anyway. All right, so let's go back to our lines again. And we're going to come right in here. You're going to have trim. You're going to have a wreath. I don't want you to get all frustrated with straight lines. I want you to enjoy the process. So take the time. You can see I didn't sit and take a lot of time doing the lines, but if you sit and do the pencil lines, you're going to have something good to follow. Okay, now that I've finished my base of my door, I've let my medium dry, and we're ready to finish the door. All right, so go back to all the different accents you're going to put on the door, and let's start there. And so I'm using the sap green and maybe even the larger handle of my 3/4 brush, and I'm going to come right in here and I'm going to make a circle of the sap green to make it the size I want it. All right. And I would put hinges here, but you don't really see them with all the rose trellis that's over there. So I'm going to then take the 12 flat and I'm going to come here and put the mail slot in. And so I just added that because I thought it needed a little bit of interest on the door because after I did my wreath. So my wreath's up here. I'm going to come below where my handle is. And I'm just going to come across and make a little slot for the mail. All right. Then I might coat that again a little bit later. Let's see how that dries up. Or let me just go sideways. Okay, all right, so let's get my liner here, and I'm going to use a little bit of licorice, a little bit. I made a little inky, rolled this number 2 script liner with the licorice. All right, so I'm going to touch the handle, and then I'm going to curve down. Just put a little dot here, but I also am going to bring a little bit of licorice on the outside of that handle. Now, we just pick a little thicker licorice so that it shows better. And that gives it a little bit of shading. All right. And I did come in here and kind of straighten this up. And gave you a little detail, and we'll shade underneath so that it gives a little bit of depth. All right, so this is when I could come in here with my chalk and then put a little bit of shape for my wreath. So if I have my ruler and get the idea of the wreath being about 3.5 inches, so I'm going to come up here, say I want this to be about right here. Nice size wreath, and 3.5 inches is way bigger than you might think. All right, so just do a rough draft of where you want that, and that's going to help you see the whole look. All right, so then I'm going to take my two script liner with some burnt umber. And there again, I like to have 2 colors, 1 stroke as we're blending, shading, and highlighting in each stroke. See how you can use white and burnt umber, wicker white and burnt umber, but the yellow ochre and the burnt umber gives you a nice depth, natural look. Okay, so look, I'm weaving, loose weave, pick up. I'm not making this inky. This is thicker paint. It's okay if it has ridges. I like the highlights that come when you do this. Now what I want you to see is that you don't have to worry about the chalk right now. Oh, and I don't want to put my hand in my knob. You don't have to worry about the chalk, because when this is all dry, any white that's there will come right up. Okay, so a little bit. So A lot of people will stop, artists will stop like really thin, like this much, and tight. So I want you to think about, let's make it luscious and weave in and out, weave across here with some light. You see that? So I'm heavier and then I light, heavier and light. And that's going to make it interesting too, guys. You can see I need a little bit of that light through there. Ain't that kind of fun? And grapevines are easy. They're fun. Anybody who's done my wreath of the month with me last year will see that we did some really fun wreaths. Now, what's fun about this project is that you can put any flowers that you want, any color that you want that matches your house or your love of roses. All right, so then I'm going to come back with some burnt umber. Now you can see mine's a finger wide, so I'm still going to make it a little bit bigger. I wanted to make a statement on this door. So when I told you not to worry about the door being absolutely perfect, it's because we put so much on it that we want a nice door, but we also are going to fancy it up here. All right, so I do like a few little curls that come in. So if I do get some burnt umber and make it inky, and I might put a teeny bit of licorice in that burnt umber. And that will give you just another feel of a little teeny bit of loose vine. All right. I think I need just a little bit more licorice. All right, all these little steps and detail really add to your piece. Isn't that kind of fun? Look at that. All right. Now, I'm going to pick up some floating medium and a little bit of burnt umber. But you know what? I want to do something here, which I always tell people to come over where you can get right next to it. So let's get the floating medium here, and let's come right next to it, because that's where you can see if you're doing a good job of floating. See that? Floating medium burnt umber. All right, so very carefully. Sometimes I'll let this dry first and then come back and do this later. Which, if I want some of this medium brown into the wreath some, I can do that later. Like I can go right on top of everything. But I want this shaded right under here to make it warm and give you more depth. See that? Actually, I'm going to put a little bit of licorice in this brown. Because I think it'll look better a little bit darker. So you go right, real loosely, right under there, okay? And then let's come right down under here. So it's right under in there. And then the bottom of this, the bottom of the bottom, and the bottom of the top. All right, so instantly that just brings it where looks like it's lifted off the wreath, off the door a little bit. And then I put a little shadow underneath here, okay? I also came around here, I see. I shadowed a little bit around the handle. That's kind of risky because it isn't dry. All right, there we go. So these are some things that I come up with later. So I actually did my greenery first, and then I thought it still needed depth. So just think about that as you're working with that. Now, when this is not, as always, sometimes I can't get a really good chisel. I mean, skinny enough, thin enough chisel with a 12. I'm going to try this, but you might have to use a script liner. All right, because what I needed is a green, but I need a green that's going to show on green. Right, so I'm using citrus, that citrus mix I made for the door in wicker white, or you could just use citrus green and wicker white. But what we're doing in here is that we are using and making the little thin background with the script liner, and we're using citrus. All right. So let's make a brighter citrus green. All right. And wicker white. I can get pretty thin there, but if you want even thinner, let's go to our liner and get some of the citrus along with some of the white. Let's get a little bit more white here. You need a clean white. All right, that's wicker white, by the way. All right, we're going to pick up some wicker white and let's get a little inky. Got too much paint there. I want to roll it around. All right, so this is going to help you if you see where I can get real thin little lines up here. And then I want you to look at the teaching guide here, because see these little sprays where you're going from a tip, you're going to make little clusters that are going to hold the little white flowers. So you can practice on your guide and wipe it off. Or it looks pretty easy on this one, so you might want to just come over here and have different levels, okay? Like I have some up higher. This is still a little thick on my brush, so it makes a difference if it's, I get some of that paint out of there and then make it really thin. All right, so I like them at different heights. So let's put another little one right in here. And down here. Can't see that very well. There we go. And so you want to get them prepped so in all these little areas, even if you don't see that really well, it will make a difference when we put the little heads on top of those flowers. One out here. And I thought, what could I do that would look good in this little wreath? It's just a little sprig of color, but I didn't want to fight with my roses, so I ended up putting white. All right, so I'm going to now come in with some of these greens, and I'm going to lay this brush flip, flop along the bottom here. All right. So I want you to see right here, see the little bit. I put dark first, sap green. And that's just like the mossing or something to attach it onto your wreath to make it look natural down there. And then I picked up some of this light color that I'm using. Maybe a little citrus. Okay, see just a little bit. All right, now I really wanted it to be delicate, so now what I'm going to do, I thought about string bows or whatever, but I think it's enough with just our white. So if you take your little finger and I like to really tap it. So if I hold this steady and I get comfortable with my little finger tapping, I can get them all kind of randomly the same. And they're kind of arched at the top, little baby's breath. It's just thick white, don't make it inky. Then there's the one right here in the middle. Now you can see I'm running out of paint. I can roll it over a little bit, or I can just tip more paint. Just a little bit. Okay, so let's go, there we go. Let's go down, and right under here, we're gonna look at the base. All right, so when we're looking at the base, we're gonna concentrate on getting all of this brickwork in here. It could be tiles or bricks, whatever. One thing that I did do is I got a little bit of medium on my floating medium on my 12 flat, and I'm going to just grab a little bit of the brown. Got to make sure it's wet. And you can touch a teeny bit of yellow ochre. Remember, this is burnt umber, yellow ochre on the 12 flat. And I put a little bit of medium because I want it not too strong, but I just want enough. So I'm going to come along here and I'm going to pull. Now you can see that's not quite enough, but it's better to do less than too much. Okay, so I'm going to come across here. Over here, a little bit there. See, I want it stronger and lighter. Yellow ochre again. There's some burnt umber. All right, and then let's get some floaty medium and come across here. All right, I'm going to get the burnt umber and make this top edge heavier. Right across here. And then what's going to happen is we need the dark burnt umber. And then I'm going to come across here. I'm going to go little marks across here, but down. Straight down, which is going to give you the dimension you need. So we can float some darker in there later, but what happens, here's the same thing. We have this going down and this going here. Okay. Okay. Okay, so what happens along here, I can float a little bit later. But there again, I'm going to use the yellow ochre, burnt umber, and medium. Because I just want a nice smooth look here. A little rustic though. And you could put some potted flowers in here too if you wanted to. All right, so what's going to happen is I can come back and shade a little bit if I need to in here later. In the corners, it needs a little bit more of a straight line right there, okay? All right, so let's go and put some burnt umber trunk in here because I didn't want a pot. I'm going to put some greenery and see the greenery is going to come about there a little bit in here. And so I want this topiary, the easiest thing to do is touch with the chisel. See my little fingers running on the edge of the frame? And I'm going to get a steady spot and I'm going to pull straight down because it's important that this trunk looks straight. And then we're going to put a big ball here and then one on top. So that looks about right. Can you see that? Let's do a little bit more. All right. Now we want the trellis, the rose trellis, to go up and over. So let's use the burnt umber for that too. And so I'm just putting a little bit of the same grapevine look. Instead of using the liner, I'm going to use the chisel edge of the 12. And this doesn't really show, it just lots of times peeps through and it gives you a path. Because then I'm going to show you on your teaching guide the greenery that I use. But just a little bit's going to help you feel like it's your map to lay this out, okay? All right, so see, it gives you a foundation. And then what we're gonna do is we look on here to get your greens, and this is sap green, and that's the citrus that we're gonna use, and then we're gonna pounce those right on top. This is big enough, you could almost go ahead and use, I used a 12, but you can use your scruffy also. This greenery on the sides here, I just used the corner and I used sap green as citrus to just fill in this area. All right, so let's look over here because the other greenery we're gonna put on is we slap the corner with sap green. And then I mix these two for leaves later. That's what we're going to do. But it has the whole path, the sap, besides the steps of what to do. We're going to use the sap green with the 12. Then we're going to use the citrus green on top of that with the 12. And then we're going to go make the leaves. And the little teeny leaves and curlicues are made with a 2 script liner. This right here is still the 12, but we're barely pushing. And I'll show you how to do those a little bit later. All right. So let's clean that brown out. Now I showed you how you can use it on the teaching guide with the corner of the brush, but you can also, like I said, you could use the scruffy brush, but I like using different brushes and different slip slaps and all to make it just look like it's different foliage. So I think you'll like the way, let's see again, it shows us that we did the sap first because you have to have dark to see light. So we're going to have a smaller head on here. Okay, just the very corner of the brush. All right, so it has texture. And here's bigger. It's a little bit larger here. Slip, slap, slip, slap. See the corner? Slip, slap, slip, slap. Okay, so I can make this all a little bit bigger. You can tap it, and get your shape a little bit larger. These are fun too, to make little colors in it if you want it to be something other than just a green topiary. Okay. Now I can go ahead while I'm here. I don't want to go too far because I want this green to be wet, the sap green to be still wet when I put the citrus on it, because then you'll get some colors in between the citrus and the sap. Okay, so there we go. So let's stop there and then go get your citrus green. All right, and then we're going to come here and tap in here. A little bit of highlight with citrus. And I did even add a teeny bit of white to the topiary. So see where I have the dark underneath and the highlights a little higher on here. Let's get a teeny bit of white. See what happens when you start getting that little glow in there. Just with the corner. All right, and then I'm just going to put citrus down here. All right, so let's just put a teeny bit over here. I just had some at the very bottom, and I left it kind of dark because it's underneath this rose trellis. So you want it darker under here because it's shadowed. All right. So now what we're doing around this whole area, wherever I want the rose trellis to be, is I'm getting sap green on here. And I want you to have a background, because if you put a little bit of leaves and a little bit of roses along here, you're going to see through the background and it's not going to have depth. So what we want to do is keep the guide in front of you so you don't overdo it. All right, so if I put the guide there, right here, I see that see how often I do this? And then I'm going to go on all the molding there. But see, it's got space in between it. And I definitely do not leave it that way because we need to put light in between. But what I want you to see is that we need some light areas and some, look, this is a lot heavier here. Let's say we do some heavier here. But they're not, I don't want it to be spot, 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 spot. That's what a lot of people that paint with me, my students, I'll see that. And I'll go random, 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 move it around. See, I'm turning the brush a little bit to use the different colors on there. Okay. And I can come back later and after I've done some light and add a little bit darker again. All right. Okay, step 2 is we're going to come in here with some of the citrus. So I am going to wash that off and pick up citrus green. All right. And I'm just going to come in here randomly. I am going to use this mostly for the leaves, but we'll just come in here and just add a few. Okay. All right. So now let's practice using some citrus green and sap green. All right, we're going to work that in. If you don't have the paint colors next to each other, you dip the 2 corners and you come over here and work it in. And we've got to work this in until we feel comfortably that we're going to get this shade. So this looks more like this shade over here, but this is still less. Okay, so I'm going to wipe this off, because remember it's got a sealer in it, so this paint will dry on here and it'll be hard to get off, and we want you to be able to use it over and over. All right, so let's work on this leaf a minute. So we're pushing down and standing up, pushing down and standing up, because we want it very small. And if we're over here, we're going to push heavier with pressure, and then we're going to lift. So it's real important that you practice your leaves and get comfortable with those. And even, we'll come back and look at this again, but even when we're up here and we're going to make a bigger leaf, you practice slow the first time, and then as you practice more, then it looks better when you go quicker. After you get it where you want it, then you're going to go and stroke right over this, okay? And turn it around. All right. And I'm going to the left side. If you're a lefty, you'll start on the right side. It'll be easier for most of you that way. All right. So let's come and see the little bits of those green little leaves I put in. And I do put some of the leaves afterwards, but look at all your roses as you lay those on. Then I know where I need to put a few extra. But I do go and put some first. All right. So keep that there so you remind yourself again. And we're going to citrus green sap. And I want it lighter, remember, because it's these leaves. And I just came in here and I start working little bits up onto the edge of the molding. So we're going to pull a stem when we can. A lot of this I did afterwards, after the roses. You can turn it around so the darker green goes up first on some. Oops, that picked up that cluster of green. Okay. All right, I'm going to have a couple up here. All right, so when I get down to the end, I'm only doing little teeny leaves with the 2-script liner. All right. And I put some of those in here too. I did a lot of little roses on here, so you decide how many you want. The key is to not get carried away. Sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I can just go and go and go. And then I'm like, ooh, maybe I should have stopped sooner. Especially if you like what you're doing. All right, let's work on our roses. Okay, so I'm going to slide this out of the way for a while so we can just practice on this rose for a minute and let you understand the rose before we put it in the middle of all the green, and the green's drying. And so I do not want you painting this rose until the green's all done. You put the rose on there, it'll make a mess with the wet sap green. So let's get our apple red and let's practice a little bit on this rose before we go to it. All right, so we're going to use your 12 to lay down some color, and then we're going to use the apple red to give highlights on a script liner. So what I want you to see here is that I'm going to do a mix. I'm going to use burnt umber to get a shade that we want to use. So let's put some burnt umber here. And then let's put some apple red. And so we need a dark color. Remember, I keep saying you need to have dark to see light. Well, I really want this apple red. Can you see that? I want that color to pop. So we've got to have the right tone underneath for that. The little red lines, apple red lines to show. All right, so there we go. All right, so when we're on our piece, we're gonna put this color. See how I've got that color? Make sure you've got the right color. And then when we put this in, we're gonna go around and put a spot of this wherever we want our roses, all right? Then we're gonna use a clean script liner and pick up just apple red, thick apple red. And we're gonna make these marks. So you can practice on here and feel comfortable with their little commas, push and lift. So right here's the center, and then we're gonna come around. We want fresh apple red color. And that literally is all we're gonna do to make those cute little roses. All right, so practice that a little bit and try to get something that looks like a rose to you and that you would be happy with. And you can even add some of these extra little guys out here on the side with just apple red to give it some extra petals outside of the dark. All right. And so I'm going to dry mine just a little bit so it is ready for us to go. And then I'm going to keep my red rose right there in front of me so I'm staying on track on what I want that to look like. So you guys dry yours and I'll dry mine and we'll be ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to lay out my roses by using my mix of burnt umber and apple red. And it's going to help me to put my project right there so you can see what I'm doing. So as I'm coming along here, I'm doing my triangles of design. So I'm doing 1, 2, 3, and then I'm repeating these triangles as I go around. Do you see that? 1, 2, 3, and then you're trying to figure out where the 1, 2, 3. We come all through here and find those triangles because most people ask me, how do you know where to put the next one? And I also have some going to the left, to the right, and then even hanging down a little bit. So that makes it interesting. All right, so I'm going to come right here and put my first one. Now remember why we're having this muted color, because it's darker. All right, so I put one kind of tricky on the molding. I'm getting a little big there. I'm gonna make some a little bit smaller. So see, I have some coming around here. 1, 2, 3, go back to my triangle. And one up here. So I'm not exactly looking where I put my last one. I'm just kind of randomly putting, as long as you have triangles to help you lay it out, you're good. When it matters is when we're getting ready to put which way they're facing. Oops, that one's a little big. There, I'll put another one out here. I thought that's enough on there. And up here, let's do 3 here. 1, 2, 3. That's not covering very well. Then I got a bigger one up here. All right, and then we have a few coming down. And those can get smaller and smaller. Okay, now we get to have fun and make it look like a rose. All right, so I'm just gonna put this here so you see me going into it. And I'm going to make the center with my commas. And then come around from there. Around from here, here. Now remember what I said, we can do a few extra down here. Then I'm going to have this one go out this way a little bit. So if you put a little bit more pressure, it comes out past the rose itself. I don't know if you can see this up close, right there. So by putting a little bit of pressure, see how it gives you a little bit more shape to the petals. This one's a little tough because it's on the ridge here. That's okay. Just so you see the dark and some light, you're going to get the illusion of what you see here a little bit better. All right, so that one's facing to the right, to the left. All right. See how I go outside of the base a little bit, Now, if you see the ridges of this paint, really help this make it look better. Just be random which way they face, so they don't look like little soldiers all lined the same way. If you notice, I'm kind of flipping them from side to side. All right. See how that, I love apple red because it is so much of a difference from the other reds as far as brightness. So I like to put berry wine sometimes. Another color that surprises me that gives you depth is a sap green. You can take a sap green mixed in or double loaded when I'm doing bigger roses. And you can't ever tell it's green. It just looks like another shade. All right. I dropped a little drop of red there. Okay. Aren't those fun? I bet you didn't know you could stroke a little rose that good. All right, so a little bit. I want to come up here and make sure that looks like a rose there. All right, so I'm going to turn this one in a little bit. All right, so now as we're coming around here with these little guys, I would pick this up and turn it around so it's easier for you to do. All right, I have a couple of them facing down. All right, some of these bigger ones, you can see I can 1, 2, 3, 4, come all out here. All right, especially this big one here. All right, so that's your center. You don't want it hanging much on the door because the door won't open, right? Just little details. So look, that's a big rose and it still looks cute. All right, this one's coming up. A lot of red paint. You see that? A lot of apple red. And it's okay if that base doesn't dry first. It actually adds to it sometimes, because it gives you more shades. This one I'm coming in a little bit. So your base doesn't give it a real shape. It's what you add with the apple red. Right. And when you're all done, if you OD'd and did too much of the apple red on top, you can make a center by just going back and adding a teeny bit of that dark mix. All right, so you can see as those are drying, see how, so if I needed to, let's see if I need anywhere, I could come like right there and add more dark in the middle. So you can fix it if there's any spots that need something. Like if I feel like I didn't have enough dark in there. So wasn't that fun? I think it gives you a nice little illusion. All right, now I always like to do a few little curly cues. So I did bring my green over to the door, it looks like a little bit more. But while I've got this liner, I'm going to mix some inky sap green with water. I'm going to roll this. I got paint all up in my ferrule there. All right, I'm going to roll this and make sure I've got a really nice thin little tip on here. And then I am going to come all in here and out here and do little curls for interest out here. All right, so I just keep getting a little bit more paint. That went into the brown a little bit, okay. All right, now, I came down a little bit more over here. And you can make this lighter or darker. We got more greenery to add. And I did have this one get carried away and it grew over the door. All right, but see where I'm missing right in here? So I can come over with a few more leaves. All right, so we get our two greens. Sap green, citrus green. A little bit of medium because I don't want it really heavy. I want some of them a little transparent. Actually, I did add a teeny bit of white. All right, so I have two things going on here. I have a few more of these light little guys going here and there. But then, so see how that fills that in. But then I came in and slapped the corner of the brush with some dark green, sap green. Here we are. So then I came in, this is when I said you can come, just add just the corner, so you're slapping this corner like you're sweeping it. All right, because see, I didn't remember, I don't want a lot of underneath showing because it should be very full and green. Okay. All right, so we are going to now do these itty bitty leaves that are hanging down from this little spray here. And like I told you, I use a little liner to do those. Okay. And I'm going to pick up the citrus green. And I'm going to push down, push the tip and lift. Remember, we practiced that on the guide. And always put that right in front of you. It helps you see what we're trying to do and reminds you, even though I'm teaching you here live, it reminds you what we're trying to achieve. So just little teeny trailing. And then after I get some light ones here, I did add a few sap green little leaves. Just because I didn't like it being all one color. Do you see that? So if you flatten this out, you can get a bigger leaf. Look, push, lift, with just a little script liner. Like right in here, push, lift, push, it gives it wider, and then to the point. Okay. Alrighty, so let's go to the top to do our finishing touches. And I'm going to practice really quick. Let's look at the big rose, because this is going to be a little bit different than what you just learned. All right, so what we're using here is the apple red and burnt umber and double loading it, like you might see me normally do. All right, so we're going to make a cup here. So I'm going to, let's put some burnt umber over here next to it, next to our apple red. So we have an easier double loading, okay? We're going to come right between the two and pick up and come here and work it in. We still have a cubby left. So you can move your brown over, make it easier for you. Now we want to have a bright red and a really good darker color. So we're going to pick up fresh red here and there, the fresh apple red, but you're going to see if you've got this blend right here. See that blend? All right, so that's going to help you get this depth all in here. And then I'm going to make the little cup here. So I'm just going to kind of smush it around and here. Then I'm going to make the cup with the darker brown, the burnt umber right there. And then we're going to start stroking this rose. All right? And you're going to wipe this off so you're ready to come back. But let's practice some of these strokes that I added on here. Some of these that we add are when we're going, let's flatten this brush really good. Make sure it's really nice and flat, even though you have lots of paint, more paint than you probably ever thought of using at once. All right, so I went up and over, then I did a U. It shows you right here, 1, 2. Then get more red, and then we can do 3, and then 4. It shows you exactly which way the arrows should go for you to get the success on this rose. All right, then 5 comes around. See how the bright red, apple red showing? All right, and then you can come down here with your 6. So here's the strokes. You practice these strokes right here. So you can see I'm going to push, lean out, slide, touch, lean out, slide. That gives you the rose peeling over. This is touch, pressure, and lift to the chisel. All right? So you're going up and over. Then you're going to do the U shape right here. But because the dark was underneath, it made it possible for that to be perfect for you. All right, so we're going to clean that off. I need a new paper towel here. And then we're ready to start. All right, so we've got our blend like we want it. You practice till you feel comfortable. And then all I do is dot the little centers with a little bit of the moon yellow. We have green leaves put in there. So let's go look and see what we're going to do next. All right, so I'm going to bring it down here. I'm going to leave space for my rose. So let's see. I have the rose kind of tilting to the right side, but I'm going to put the shape here so I can see where I'm going to be. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and make the cup. So I'm picking up the burnt umber. Remember the cup right here? I'm going to put the cup in here, and then the dark burnt umbers on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to let that go so I have a perfect place to see where my leaves are going to go. And remember, we practiced the leaves, but I'm going to refresh your memory of that. All right, so we're going to double load, and I need some fresh paint. So let's get some more of the sap, and let's get away from this green here. We have sap and citrus, and my citrus is low too. Okay. So we're going to pick up citrus and sap, and we got one more cubby left. All right, there we go. This has been a busy palette today. All right, so when we practice on this, let's look at this again. All right, we're going to go right here and see if we've got a good load. Looks pretty good, see? And then remember, just practice on here, because we're going to do two sides of this. It's easier to turn one way and the other this way. And then you pull a stem right in the middle, all right? And to do that all at once is good. And then these have a little bit of red in them, but we put a few of these leaves all around the outside of the small buds, okay? Now these small buds up here can be just like what you did below around the door on your trellis, or you can do a miniature of what we just did here with the 12. So we'll do a little bit of both. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the leaves. I've got my nice loaded brush, and I don't think you need medium, because we've got, if you do a 12 and you're doing small strokes, you should have enough paint on here that you don't need medium if you have the paint that you need. All right, so I'm going to pull the stem. I'm going to get more paint. You do one side. You're going to come right on the edge and do another one. So it's a heart leaf, but we don't see the whole heart because we're coming out of the flower. So I need more paint now, so I'm getting my citrus and my sap again, working it in. And I'm going to do another little leaf here. And this side I'm just going to slide. All right, so I do like to put where the next few leaves are going to go, but I'm going to put a rose there first. So there you go. All the other leaves are going to come on top of the rose buds. All right, so I'm going to go back to my red. Let's pull some of that apple red with my burnt umber and apple red blend. Get fresh paint on here. I'm going to pick a little bit more apple red up because I'm doing this right over here. I'm just going to do a couple strokes in there. And now what I'm going to do on these is I will come in here and add a little bit of dark brown burnt umber later in the centers. But see my triangle again, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to use this one to do a second triangle. 1, 2, let's come down here. All right. Now I do see I want the brown in the middle. But it's small, so we just have to give a little bit of this shape. And this is going to have leaves over it. There we go. All right, so let's look at that pretty rose that we made. And let's stroke that again. Now, to do that, I want you to have this right here. It's going to help you see step by step. All right. So this is moving all around. I want to get this out of the way. All right. So I'm going to come right here and get that fresh, bright red on the top. Go get more red, more apple red. And then I'm going to come right across here and bring that fresh apple red right on top of that brown cup. All right, so then if you look again, we're going to just stroke again on our palette. Let's get more brown there so you see that well. Each layer, you have to be able to see what's going to the next layer. So if it's got enough fresh apple red, then it will show. So we put another layer, another layer. So sometimes I'm just going to pick up red, apple red there. See how that apple red pops? There you go. With just a little teeny bit of yellow dots inside of that, it's going to really make it look good. All right, so to finish this up, I'm going to do citrus green and sap green again and put those few extra leaves. So what's going to happen when I told you you pick up a little red is I stay on my chisel and get a little bit of that red. It picks up a little bit of the red, the apple red, as I'm stroking it, and it gives you a few pretty colors in your leaves. See right there again? Just a little bit. And I think some curly cues will finish that up pretty good. Those don't need stems in them as much. All right. And if they do, you could use a script liner to do that. So I do want to come into this mix right here. Make inky. And then just add little tendrils out from there. All right, just a little bit. And we want a little bit of yellow little dots. So we want moon yellow. And I put a teeny bit of white. Okay, wicker white and moon yellow. Let's move that green off of there. All right, so I'm going to pick up both colors at the same time. I'm going to do more yellow now. Moon yellow, wicker white, and we put a little bit of moon yellow over here. Just little tips of it. It's better when it has a few minutes to dry. But I want to get it all in here so y'all see. Okay. Now, to finish off my piece, besides signing it, I want us to look at how we're going to put our letters on here and give you a little lesson about that so that when you finish, you have a nice piece here. We've used sap green. Let me move this out of the way. We have our welcome. I showed you how we transfer it. We're going to lay it on top, just like we did on top of our surface. We transferred it on. And then when we're all done, we've used sap green and achieved a real kind of simple but fun lettering process to give us our completed piece. And we have a nice message for people who enter your home. This is a great gift for housewarming. So a new move. And we're going to roll our script liner into the sap green. We're going to put pressure and lift as we come around. And we're going to fill in our little pressure, our little space in between the two lines. All right. And then we go back and smooth it in. Okay. There we go. I'm better when I have a long stretch. Okay. There we go. I like to have my little finger pull me, get this hand more steady. And then when I'm on these longer these wider sections, to do 2 strips, and then it's easier to fill in the middle. Put a little bit of pressure and it fills it in. Then I have the thin ones, which are easier to pull down. And then you're just going to go along here and fill each one of them in. Right, and so if you want to, you can do it. I could see right here where I could have done it a little bit wider there coming down to match this width. All right, so just continue to follow those all around like we did, and make sure that we are going under, back up on top, under, back up on top as we come around. And this lettering doesn't need anything except making sure you're straight. And that's sometimes a difficulty for me. As you see, I went downhill here, and this one's straighter. So be sure of that when you're putting it on. And the straight line is going to make a big difference for you when you do that. So when you look at this piece, you can see that it is placed perfectly in there. So just measure how tall you want it from here. As long as you have a straight line, then it'll be easier to stay along the track. And then this was floated some yellow ochre on the inside. All right, so we're going to ghost shadow some yellow ochre. And I just want a little bit. All right, and we're going to come on the right side. On the inside of here. On the inside of this. See how nice that just finishes it off? And the floating medium is very forgiving for you. Just keep getting it. Make sure you got medium so it moves. But what's wonderful is this moves great on the FolkArt paint, the multi-surface, because we have that good sealer inside gives you a nice finish. Okay, So I hope you enjoyed that lesson as much as I did, from the little roses that we painted all the way to the bigger roses, and lots more elements in this painting that I know that you're gonna love as you're working on your piece. So take pictures, share on Plaid's Facebook group, Let's Paint with Plaid, and be sure to hashtag it, Let's Paint Challenge, so that everybody on that site will be able to see what you're doing. And I am thrilled to have you join me next month, because next month we're going to do a country church to fit right there on your gallery wall. And it even has hydrangeas on it. So until next month, let's paint.